Okay, so today we're going deep on something that sounds like it's straight out of a spy movie. We're talking international espionage, but not the kind with fancy gadgets and double agents. This is about cybersecurity, or more specifically, the lack of it.
And this isn't some far-off threat we're talking about. This is happening right now.
Exactly, it's happening right under our noses. We've got a whole stack of sources that paint a pretty disturbing picture of how vulnerable our communication networks are. Starting with this 404 Media article, they uncovered this Department of Homeland Security presentation from back in 2017.
Oh, yeah, that one was pretty revealing.
It straight up names countries like Russia, China, Israel, and Iran as actively exploiting security holes to spy on people inside the U.S.
Yeah, it's kind of wild when you think about it. Your location, your calls, even your texts, all of that can be tracked without you ever knowing, even if you think your phone is secure.
Wait, seriously? Just for making a phone call?
It all comes down to this thing called the Signaling System 7, or SS7. Imagine it's like the invisible network that connects all our phone calls across the globe.
Okay, so every time you make a call, it's not just going directly to the other person.
Not always. Especially if you're roaming outside your normal coverage area, then SS7 kicks in to route the call. The problem is, this system has security flaws that can be exploited, like a backdoor into our communications.
So it's not about hacking into your phone directly, it's about intercepting those signals while they're in transit.
You got it. And it's not just about listening in either. They can use it to track your location, send you fake messages, even deliver malware to your device.
That's a bit terrifying. And it gets even scarier because a CISA official said this is likely just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that was Kevin Briggs. He is a pretty well-respected cybersecurity expert. And CISA, that's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, if anyone needs a reminder.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are supposed to be protecting us from this kind of thing.
Exactly. And even they are saying there's a lot more going on than we realize.
It wouldn't surprise me. There are whole companies out there that specialize in SS7 exploits. Basically, they're selling these spying tools to anyone who wants them.
Wow, okay. So that's pretty unsettling. But how does this all connect to our next source? The Blue Sky thread from Eric Geller. He was talking about this thing called Salt Typhoon, right?
Right. Salt Typhoon is basically a textbook example of how those vulnerabilities are being weaponized. This hacking campaign, it's attributed to Chinese government hackers. They targeted at least 8 U.S. telecom companies. And get this, it wasn't just random snooping. They were going after specific targets.
Like who?
Government and political figures. They were after intelligence.
So we're talking full-blown espionage here, not just some kids messing around in their basement.
Exactly. They were after metadata and call records.
Metadata. I feel like I've heard that before, but refresh my memory. What exactly is metadata?
Think of it like this. It's the digital footprint of your call. It shows who you called, when you called them, for how long, even where you were when you made the call.
Ah, okay. So even if they couldn't hear what was being said, they could still learn a lot about who these people were talking to, where they were going.
Yeah.
That's pretty unsettling.
You can say that again. And it's why the White House is now pushing for these minimum cybersecurity practices for telecom companies. It seems like they're finally realizing these companies hold a treasure trove of sensitive information.
But they might be a little late to the party, if you ask me. Our third source, this letter from Senators Ron Wyden and Eric Schmidt to the Department of Defense, it paints a pretty grim picture of the DoD's own cybersecurity efforts.
They're saying the DoD isn't doing enough to protect its own communications.
It's ironic, isn't it? We've been talking about other countries spying on us, but it turns out we might not even be protecting ourselves from that kind of surveillance.
So what exactly are they doing wrong?
Well, for starters, they're still relying on unencrypted phone lines and platforms like Microsoft Teams.
Wait, Microsoft Teams? Isn't that what, everyone uses for work these days? What are we supposed to use instead? Carrier pigeons. Well, the senators actually suggest some pretty good alternatives that offer end-to-end encryption. Things like Signal, WhatsApp, even FaceTime. Think of it like this. You're sending a letter, but it's in a locked box, and only the person with the key can open it. That's essentially what end-to-end encryption does for your messages and calls.
Okay, so that's the gold standard, end-to-end encryption. Got it. But if it's that good, why isn't the DoD using those?
That's the million-dollar question. The senators are especially concerned about the DoD's reliance on these potentially vulnerable telecom carriers for their Spiral 4 contract. It's a multi-billion-dollar deal that covers all sorts of wireless devices and services for soldiers and civilian employees.
Okay, so what's the problem with that?
Some of the carriers involved are the same ones that were reportedly breached in that Salt Typhoon campaign we were just talking about.
You're kidding me. It's like they're setting themselves up for failure.
That's why the senators are demanding an investigation. They want to know why the DoD isn't taking more proactive steps to secure their communications, especially when there are these more secure options available.
It does make you wonder, right? Especially because they even point to this Navy pilot program that was using a platform called Matrix. And apparently it was pretty successful.
Exactly. It just goes to show that it can be done. The real challenge is getting the whole DoD to adopt that mindset and make those solutions the norm, not just some experiment.
Right, right. It's like, if the Navy can figure it out, why can't the rest of the DoD?
It's a good question, and one we should all be asking, considering what's at stake.
Absolutely.
And remember, this isn't just about protecting government secrets.
It's about all of us.
Right. If they can target government officials, what's stopping them from going after regular people like you and me?
Okay, that's a thought I don't want to dwell on too long. Maybe we should take a break and come back to that later.
Yeah, let's give everyone a moment to process all of this. Welcome back. We've been talking about some pretty unsettling stuff, how vulnerable our communication networks are, even at the highest levels of government.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Makes you wonder if they're struggling with this. What hope do the rest of us have? Or are we just sitting ducks?
Well, it's not all doom and gloom. There are things we can do to protect ourselves.
Okay, so what can we actually do to make our communications more secure? Give it to me straight.
One of the most effective things, honestly, is to use end-to-end encrypted messaging apps. Like we talked about earlier, apps like Signal, WhatsApp, or FaceTime, they're like sending a message in a locked box. Only the person with the key can open it.
So ditch the regular texting, switch to those apps. Got it. What about voice calls? Those seem pretty vulnerable too.
You're right. Traditional phone calls, they're more susceptible to interception, especially if they're not encrypted. But, a lot of these messaging apps like Signal, they also offer end-to-end encrypted voice calls.
So stick with those secure messaging apps for calls too. Got it. Anything else we can do?
Using a VPN or virtual private network can add an extra layer of security.
Right, VPNs. They encrypt all your internet traffic, making it harder to track what you're doing online, right?
Exactly. They're especially important when you're using public Wi-Fi, which is notoriously insecure. But, VPNs aren't foolproof. You need to make sure you have a reputable provider, and they don't protect against every type of surveillance.
So it's like a seatbelt, good to have, but doesn't make you invincible. Got it. What else?
Being mindful of what you share online is huge. The more personal information you put out there, the more attractive a target you become. Think of it like you're leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs for spies to follow.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Exactly. So be cautious about what you post on social media, watch out for phishing scams, and use strong passwords and two-factor authentication for all your accounts. These are like the basics of cyber hygiene, but they go a long way.
Okay, so secure apps, VPN, careful what you share. Anything else to add to our digital self-defense toolkit?
Don't forget to keep your software updated. Updates often include security patches. They plug those vulnerabilities we were talking about.
Yeah, those pesky update notifications. I usually just ignore those.
Don't. They may be annoying, but they're important. It's like getting your digital vaccines.
Okay, good point. So it's about being proactive, staying informed, and layering those security measures. It sounds like a lot of work, but I guess it's worth it if it keeps our information safe.
It's like anything else. The more you practice, the easier it becomes.
Thinking about the DoD and their cybersecurity practices, it reminds me of that Navy pilot program with the Matrix platform. Sounds like they're at least trying to find solutions.
You're right. The fact that the Navy was able to use Matrix on a decent scale, it shows it can be done. The challenge is getting the whole DoD to make those solutions the norm, not just a pilot program.
Which is where those senators come in, right? They're basically pushing the DoD to step up their game and make end-to-end encryption the standard for all communication. It's a tall order, but it seems pretty necessary, given what we've learned.
Absolutely. The DoD needs to set the example not just for their own security, but for the whole industry. Their current approach, it's more about reacting to problems than preventing them.
It's almost like they're waiting for a major cybersecurity disaster before they take it seriously.
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that. The consequences of a successful attack on their systems, that could be devastating.
Thinking about all this, it really highlights the importance of people like that CISA official, Kevin Briggs, and journalists like Eric Geller. Without them blowing the whistle on these issues, we'd be in the dark.
Couldn't agree more. Whistleblowers and investigative journalists, they play such a critical role in holding powerful institutions accountable, shining a light on these problems even when it puts them at risk.
They're the real heroes in this digital age. We owe them a debt of gratitude for bringing these issues to light. But, this isn't just a technical problem, is it? There are serious ethical and legal implications to all this spying and surveillance.
You hit the nail on the head. The use of these exploits for espionage, it raises big questions about privacy rights and the rule of law. How do we balance national security with individual freedoms in this digital age? It's a tough one.
It feels like we're constantly playing catch-up, trying to adapt our laws to keep pace with technology. Are we moving fast enough? Are our current laws even equipped to deal with these kinds of threats?
That's a debate that's happening right now, and there are no easy answers. Some people argue for stronger privacy laws, while others say law enforcement and intelligence agencies, they need the tools to combat terrorism and other threats. It's complicated.
It's a conversation that needs to happen everywhere, not just in courtrooms or government buildings. We need to be talking about this, thinking critically about the trade-offs between security and privacy. What kind of world do we want to live in? What are we willing to sacrifice in the name of security?
Exactly. We can't just bury our heads in the sand. This is about our future, our freedom.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the complexities of this digital world. It's a world where the lines between espionage, surveillance, and cybersecurity, they're all blurred. The threats are real, the stakes are high, and the answers aren't always clear.
We've explored the vulnerabilities, the motivations of those exploiting them, and what we can do to protect ourselves. But as you said, this is just the beginning of a much larger conversation.
A conversation we all need to be part of. Whether we're tech experts or just everyday people trying to navigate this digital world, we need to be aware, demand accountability, and take action to protect our privacy and security.
Our deep dive on this topic may be ending, but the journey towards a more secure and privacy-conscious digital world, that's just beginning.
Well said. This has been an incredibly thought-provoking discussion. Thank you for guiding us through this complex landscape.
It's been my pleasure. Remember, stay safe, stay informed, and stay vigilant.
So we've spent the last two parts of this deep dive really digging into the dark side of the digital world, all the ways our communications can be exploited and spied on. It's been pretty intense, but where do we go from here? We can't just sit around freaking out, right? We have to do something.
You're absolutely right. Awareness is the first step, but it's not enough. We need action.
But where do we even start? This feels like such a huge problem, way bigger than anything I can handle on my own.
It is a big challenge, no doubt about that. But I'm optimistic. I think there's always hope, always something we can do. As individuals, we can take those steps we talked about earlier. Using secure apps, being careful about what we share online, making sure our software is up to date.
Yeah, like you said before, it's about taking control of our own digital security, not waiting for someone else to do it for us. But those individual actions, they can only go so far, right? We need bigger changes, systemic changes, to really tackle this at the root.
Absolutely. We need stronger regulations and oversight of the whole telecom industry. I mean, the Biden administration pushing for those minimum cybersecurity standards, that's a start. But we have to go further. Companies need to be held accountable for protecting our data.
It's almost like they've been given this incredibly powerful technology that connects us all, but they haven't really been taking security seriously enough. The stakes are way too high for that kind of complacency. Those senators, Wyden and Schmidt, they brought up a really interesting point about the power of the government's wallet.
You're talking about how the DoD could use their massive contracts to force telecom companies to up their security.
Exactly. Like if the DoD says, look, we're only going to do business with companies that meet these really strict cybersecurity standards, that could have a ripple effect throughout the whole industry.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The government has a ton of leverage. They should be using it to push for stronger security practices, not just accepting the status quo.
Right, and it's not just about government action either. We need to support the organizations and the individuals who are fighting for our digital rights, the ones who are exposing these vulnerabilities and advocating for better privacy protections.
You're talking about groups like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the ACLU.
Yeah, exactly. And those journalists, those whistleblowers, who risk so much to bring these issues to light, we owe them a lot. We wouldn't even know about most of this stuff without them.
It's true, they're the watchdogs. the ones keeping an eye on the powerful. We need more people like that.
This deep dive has really focused on the threats and vulnerabilities, the dark side of this digital world. But I'd love to end on a more hopeful note. What about solutions? What's on the horizon that could make our communications more secure?
Well, there are some pretty exciting developments happening. We touched on one earlier, the Navy's use of the Matrix platform. It's a great example of a more secure alternative to these traditional systems that are so easily exploited.
Yeah, I remember. Matrix is open source and decentralized, which makes it much harder to control or censor. And it's designed with end-to-end encryption as the default, not just an afterthought.
Exactly. It's a totally different way of thinking about communication, one that prioritizes security and privacy right from the start.
That's the kind of thinking we need more of. What else is out there?
Well, blockchain technology has huge potential. Most people know it for cryptocurrencies, but it can also be used to secure communication.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around blockchain, but the whole point is that it's super secure and transparent, right?
You got it. It's almost impossible to tamper with data on a blockchain,
Right.
so it could be the foundation for a much more trustworthy communication system.
That's pretty amazing. Anything else you're hopeful about?
Well, the advancements in artificial intelligence and machine learning are really exciting. Imagine AI systems that can detect and respond to cyber threats in real time, way faster than humans ever could.
It'd be like having a superpowered digital bodyguard, always on alert.
Exactly. A digital immune system, constantly learning and adapting to new threats.
Those are just a few examples, but it sounds like there's some serious innovation happening in cybersecurity. It gives me hope that we can create a more secure digital future.
I agree. The challenges are huge, but so is human ingenuity. We have the knowledge, we have the tools, we have the talent. We can build a better digital world, one that's more secure, more privacy conscious, and more equitable for everyone.
It's a good reminder that we have agency, that we can shape the future we want. This deep dive has been a journey into the shadows, but it's also a call to action. It's on all of us to be informed, to demand accountability, and to push for change.
We can't be complacent. The future of our digital lives is at stake. It's time to step up and create the world we want to live in.
Those are powerful words. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your insights with us today. This has been an amazing learning experience.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, stay safe, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something new today and feel empowered to take action. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep exploring. Until next time.